The summer breeze carried the sweet scent of roses across the sprawling gardens of Marcus Sterling's Hamptons estate. White chairs lined the perfectly manicured lawn, filled with over 300 guests dressed in their finest attire. Crystal chandeliers hung from the clear tent overhead, their sparkle matching the excitement in the air. This was supposed to be the wedding of the year, the union of 45-year-old tech billionaire Marcus Sterling and the beautiful socialite Victoria Cambridge. Marcus stood at the altar, his tall frame perfectly fitted in a custom-made black tuxedo. His dark hair, touched with distinguished gray at the temples, was neatly styled. Even at 45, he carried himself with the confidence that had helped him build Sterling Technologies into a global empire. His hands were steady as he adjusted his bow tie, a small smile playing on his lips as he watched the bridesmaids walking down the aisle. The wedding planner had orchestrated everything perfectly. White and gold flowers decorated every surface, their perfume mixing with the salty ocean air. The string quartet played softly, their melodic tunes floating across the gathering. Among the guests sat the who's who of the tech world, political figures, and celebrities, all eager to witness the union of America's most eligible billionaire bachelor and the stunning Victoria Cambridge. Victoria appeared at the end of the aisle, a vision in white. Her designer gown sparkled with thousands of tiny crystals, and her blonde hair was styled in elegant waves beneath her veil. Marcus's breath caught in his throat as he watched his bride begin her walk towards him. Everything was perfect, exactly as he had planned. The ceremony began, and the officiator's words echoed across the hushed gathering. If anyone knows of any reason why these two should not be joined in matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. That was when it happened. The heavy wooden doors at the back of the tent burst open with a bang that made several guests jump in their seats. A young man strode down the aisle, his face flushed with determination. He was dressed in simple jeans and a wrinkled button-down shirt, standing out starkly among the black tie crowd. In his trembling hands, he held two things: an old photograph and what looked like a document. "I have a reason," the young man's voice rang out, clear and steady despite his obvious nervousness. "My name is James Mitchell. I'm 23 years old, and Marcus Sterling is my father." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Victoria's bouquet slipped from her fingers, landing with a soft thud on the white carpet. Marcus's face drained of color as he stared at the young man, a face that suddenly, horrifyingly, looked familiar. James held up the photograph. "This is you and my mother, Sarah Mitchell, at NIT 24 years ago." He then raised the document. "And this is a DNA test proving that you're my father." The string quartet stopped playing. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the whispers that began to spread through the crowd like wildfire. Camera phones emerged from purses and pockets, their clicks creating a symphony of scandal in the making. Marcus stood frozen, his mind racing back to his college days. Sarah Mitchell, the brilliant computer science student he dated during his final year at MIT. The woman he'd left behind to pursue his dreams of building a tech empire. The woman who tried to contact him several times over the years, only to be blocked by his legal team. Victoria's voice cut through his thoughts, sharp as steel. "Marcus? What is this?" But Marcus couldn't answer. His eyes were fixed on James's face, seeing for the first time the features he should have recognized sooner: his own nose, his mother's eyes, the same determined set of the jaw that looked back at him from every magazine cover. The perfect day shattered like a mirror, each piece reflecting a different aspect of the chaos that erupted. Guests began to stand, phones recording every moment. Victoria's father, a prominent senator, rushed to his daughter's side. Security teams moved in, uncertain whether to remove James or protect him. And in the middle of it all, father and son locked eyes across the space that 23 years of secrets had created, both knowing that life as they knew it had changed forever. 3 days after the wedding disaster, Marcus sat alone in his home office, staring at an old shoebox he hadn't opened in 24 years. The mansion was quiet now. Victoria had moved out, taking her things and her engagement ring. The media circus camped outside his gates kept growing larger each day, but Marcus barely noticed any of it. With shaking hands, he lifted the lid of the box. The smell of old paper and forgotten memories hit him immediately. Inside lay the remnants of his college years at MIT, pieces of a life he'd packed away in his rush to become successful. His fingers found what he was looking for, a stack of photographs held together by a faded rubber band. The first photo made his heart stop. There she was, Sarah Mitchell, sitting cross-legged on a library desk, her dark curly hair falling over one shoulder as she laughed at something off-camera. She wore her favorite oversized MIT sweatshirt and round glasses that kept sliding down her nose. Marcus remembered taking this picture like it was yesterday. He and Sarah had been the perfect match back then. Both computer science majors, both brilliant, both dreaming of changing the world through technology. They would spend endless nights coding together in the computer lab, sharing cold pizza and warm coffee. Sarah had been the one to help him develop his first successful app, a simple program that would later become the foundation of Sterling Technologies. Another photo showed them at a college party, Sarah pointing at something on a laptop screen while Marcus looked at her with complete adoration. He remembered that night clearly. She had found a bug in their code that had been driving them crazy for weeks. Instead of going to sleep, they had stayed up until sunrise, fixing it together. Marcus's throat tightened as he reached the last photo. It was taken the day before everything fell apart. They were standing in front of the MIT main building, his arm around her waist, both smiling broadly. The next day, he would receive the call that would change everything, an investor interested in his app, offering more money than he'd ever dreamed of seeing. The memories flooded back, sharp and painful. The argument in their tiny apartment, Sarah begging him to wait, to finish school first. She had warned him that taking the money would change him, that running a company at 22 would consume his life. But Marcus couldn't see past the zeros in the investor's offer. "We can do this together," Sarah had pleaded. "Let's graduate first, build something solid." But Marcus had made his choice. "This is my one shot," he had told her. "If you can't support my dream, maybe we shouldn't be together." He walked out that night, too proud and ambitious to look back. Within a week, he had moved to Silicon Valley. He changed his phone number, created a new email address, surrounded himself with lawyers and advisors who helped him focus solely on building his empire. Sarah had tried to reach him. Marcus knew that now. His assistant had shown him the log of attempted contacts over the years, all blocked as potential threats to the company. Letters returned unopened, calls screened, emails filtered to spam, all because his team had been trained to protect him from gold diggers and opportunists. A knock on his office door snapped Marcus back to the present. His security chief entered, looking uncomfortable. "Mr. Sterling, James Mitchell is at the gate. He's requesting to speak with you." Marcus looked down at the photo in his hands. Young Sarah's smiling face seemed to be asking him what he would do now. With a heavy sigh, he stood up. "Let him in, Johnson, and find out where Sarah is now. I need to talk to her too." The security chief's face grew even more uncomfortable. "Sir, about Ms. Mitchell. I think there's something you should know. She passed away 3 years ago. Cancer." The photo slipped from Marcus's fingers, landing face down on his desk. The weight of 24 years of mistakes crashed down on his shoulders at once. Not only had he missed his son's entire life, but he'd also lost any chance to make things right with Sarah. Outside, dark clouds gathered over the mansion, as if nature itself understood the gravity of the moment. Marcus Sterling, the man who had everything, was finally realizing just how much he had lost in his pursuit of success. The massive screen in Sterling Technologies' main conference room displayed the company's plummeting stock price in bright red numbers. Marcus sat at the head of the long table, his usual crisp appearance now showing signs of strain. His tie was slightly loose, and dark circles had formed under his eyes. Around him, board members shifted uncomfortably in their expensive leather chairs. "Another 8% drop today," Richard Chen, the chief financial officer, announced grimly. "The media coverage isn't helping. Every news channel is running the wedding video. Social media is exploding with theories about other possible secret children." Marcus watched as another financial alert flashed across the screen. In just 1 week since the wedding incident, his company had lost over $4 billion in value. His phone buzzed constantly with messages from Victoria's lawyers, reporters, and worried investors. "We need to release a statement," said Jennifer Hayes, the head of public relations. She spread several papers on the table. "The public wants answers. Our biggest clients are getting nervous. 3 major partners have already put their contracts on hold." Before Marcus could respond, his personal assistant rushed into the room. "Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you need to see this." She handed him a tablet showing a live news broadcast. On the screen, Victoria Cambridge sat in a morning show studio, tears gleaming in her eyes. I had no idea who Marcus really was, she said to the sympathetic host. To think he had abandoned his own child. How could I trust a man like that? What other secrets is he hiding? The boardroom erupted in chaos. Board members started talking all at once, their voices rising with panic. Marcus could barely hear them over the rushing in his ears. His empire, built over 2 decades of relentless work, was starting to crumble. Enough. Marcus's voice cut through the noise. Everyone fell silent. Get me James Mitchell's contact information, now. 20 minutes later, Marcus sat alone in his office, staring at his phone. James's number glowed on the screen. With a deep breath, he pressed call. To his surprise, James answered on the second ring. Hello? James, this is Marcus Sterling. I think we need to talk. Properly this time. There was a long pause. Why now? James's voice was cold. Because your stock is dropping. Because your girlfriend left you. Or because you finally found out Mom died. Marcus flinched at the bitterness in his son's voice. Because it's 23 years overdue. Before James could respond, Marcus's office door burst open. Richard Chen rushed in, his face pale. Marcus, we have a bigger problem. Someone's trying to take over the company. Marcus put the phone on speaker. What do you mean? Xavier Thompson from Rivaltech. He's buying up our falling shares. At this rate, you'll have enough for a controlling interest by the end of the week. James's laugh came through the phone, sharp and humorless. Looks like your perfect life is falling apart, just like Mom's did when you left. Marcus stared at the phone, then at the stock ticker still flashing red numbers on his computer screen. Everything he'd worked for was slipping through his fingers. But strangely, all he could think about was the pain in his son's voice. James, he said quietly, ignoring Richard's frantic gestures. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking for a chance. Not for the company's sake, but because Sarah would have wanted us to at least try. The silence that followed seemed to last forever. Finally, James spoke. I'm at Mom's old cafe on Cambridge Street, the one where you first met her. If you really want to talk, meet me there in an hour. Just you, no lawyers, no security. The line went dead. Richard immediately started protesting about security risks and company protocols, but Marcus wasn't listening. He stood up, grabbed his coat, and headed for the door. Sir, Richard called after him. What about the company? Marcus paused in the doorway. For 23 years, I chose the company over everything else. Look where that got me. Without another word, he walked out, leaving his empire to tremble in his wake. The small cafe on Cambridge Street hadn't changed much in 24 years. The same bell chimed as Marcus pushed open the door, and the smell of coffee and freshly baked cookies filled the air. In the corner booth, their old booth, sat James, looking so much like his mother that Marcus's heart ached. James didn't look up from his coffee when Marcus sat down. On the table between them lay a worn leather photo album and a stack of envelopes, all marked, "Return to sender" in red ink. Mom kept everything, James said quietly, finally meeting Marcus's eyes. Every letter she wrote to you, every email that bounced back, every photo from when she was pregnant. She never stopped trying to reach you. With trembling hands, Marcus opened the album. The first page showed Sarah, clearly pregnant, standing in front of a small apartment building. She was smiling, but her eyes held sadness. The next photo showed her in a hospital bed, holding a tiny baby, James. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment until I was 12, James continued, his voice steady but tight. Mom worked 2 jobs, teaching computer science during the day and coding freelance at night. She would fall asleep at her laptop, still trying to finish projects to pay for my school supplies. Marcus turned another page. A young James, maybe 5 or 6, sat at a computer, his small fingers on the keyboard. She taught me everything about computers, James said. Said I had your natural talent for coding. By the time I was 15, I was helping her debug programs for her clients. The next photo showed Sarah's gradual decline. Her face grew thinner. Her once vibrant curls disappeared. The cancer started when I was 19, James explained. She refused to stop working, even during chemotherapy. Said she needed to make sure I could finish college. Marcus's vision blurred with tears as he reached the final pages. A teenage James in a graduation gown, hugging a frail Sarah. She was so proud that day, James whispered. Said I reminded her of you at MIT before. Before I changed, Marcus finished, his voice rough with emotion. He picked up one of the returned envelopes. I never knew about these. My team. They were instructed to block anything that might be a threat to the company. I gave them too much power. James pulled out his laptop and opened it. I found these in Mom's email archives. Hundreds of blocked messages to your company addresses. Look at the dates. Marcus leaned forward, scanning the screen. The emails spanned years, each one marked as spam or blocked by the system. Some subject lines jumped out at him. Important. About your son. Please read. James needs you. Last try. Medical bills help. She never wanted your money, James said firmly. She just wanted you to know me, to be part of my life. Even when she was dying, she made me promise not to hate you. Said you were just lost in your ambition, not truly cruel. Marcus sat back, overwhelmed by the weight of his mistakes. I built an empire, he said softly, but I lost my soul in the process. The security, the lawyers, the protocols. They were supposed to protect me. Instead, they built a wall that kept out the only things that really mattered. James closed the laptop slowly. So what now? Your company's in trouble, your reputation's ruined, and you suddenly want to play dad. No, Marcus replied, surprising them both. I don't want to play anything. I want to earn it. Whatever that takes. I can't change the past 23 years, but I can change what happens next. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a USB drive. This contains everything about Sterling Technologies. Every code, every patent, every secret. I'm not asking for forgiveness, James. I'm asking for a chance to show you who I really am, not who I became. Outside the cafe window, reporters have begun to gather, the cameras flashing. But for the first time in decades, Marcus didn't care about his public image. In this moment, only one person's opinion mattered, the son he never knew he had, who now held the power to either complete his fall or offer him redemption. 2 weeks after their meeting at the cafe, Marcus stood in the doorway of his company's main development lab, watching James work. His son sat at a computer terminal, fingers flying across the keyboard as he examined the core code of Sterling Technologies' newest project. The sight reminded Marcus so much of Sarah that it made his chest tight. There's a vulnerability here, James said without looking up. Someone could potentially access user data through this backdoor. Mom would have spotted this immediately. His voice still carried a hint of bitterness when he mentioned Sarah, but it was softer now. Marcus moved closer, pulling up a chair beside his son. The familiar lines of code on the screen brought back memories of late nights at MIT when he and Sarah would debug programs together. Show me, he said quietly. For the next hour, father and son worked side by side, their shared genetic gift for programming creating a bridge where words had failed. James's approach to coding was remarkably similar to Sarah's, elegant, efficient, and focused on user safety above all else. You know, James said as they fixed the last line of code, Mom used to tell me stories about your college days. How you two would compete to see who could write the cleanest code. She said you always won. Marcus shook his head, a sad smile playing on his lips. She let me win. Sarah was always the better programmer. She just knew how important it was to my ego back then. The lab had emptied out hours ago, leaving them alone with the soft hum of computers. Through the wall-to-wall windows, they could see the San Francisco skyline glittering in the night. The company's stock was still down, and Xavier Thompson's takeover attempts were getting more aggressive, but in this moment, none of that seemed to matter. I found this in Mom's things, James said suddenly, pulling an old USB drive from his pocket. It's dated a month after you left for Silicon Valley. He plugged it into the computer, and a folder of files appeared on the screen. Marcus leaned forward, his eyes widening as he recognized the code. This is the original version of Sterling Safe, the security protocol that made our company famous. His voice trembled. But I thought I'd developed that 2 years after leaving MIT. James opened one of the files. You did, but Mom created this version first. Look at the timestamp. She was trying to show you that your ideas could work better if you just took more time to develop them properly. The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. Sterling Safe had been his breakthrough product, the one that had turned his company into a tech giant. All this time, Sarah had been trying to help him succeed, even after he'd walked away. She never stopped believing in you, James said softly, even when you stopped believing in everything except money and success. Marcus stood up abruptly, walking to the window. His reflection stared back at him, showing a man he barely recognized anymore. I want to make it right, he said finally. Not just with you, but with her memory too. James joined him at the window. The board meeting is tomorrow. They're voting on whether to accept Thompson's takeover offer. What are you going to do? Marcus turned to face his son. That depends. The company's original mission was to create technology that helps people, that makes the world better. Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of that, but maybe, with the right partner. He let the words hang in the air. James was quiet for a long moment, studying his father's face. Finally, he spoke. Mom's Cancer Research Foundation is struggling for funding, and her old programming school for underprivileged kids had to close last year. Marcus understood the unspoken challenge. What if we changed Sterling Technologies' focus? Used our resources to support causes that meant something to Sarah? A ghost of a smile crossed James's face, the first real smile Marcus had seen from him. I might know a programmer who could help with that, if you're ready to actually listen this time. Outside, the first light of dawn began to paint the sky, a new day breaking over the city. Father and son stood together, watching it rise, both knowing that while they couldn't change the past, they could still write a new code for the future. The tension in Marcus's private office could be cut with a knife. Richard Chen, his trusted advisor of 20 years, sat across from him while James stood by the window, his arms crossed. On Marcus's desk lay a stack of old emails, evidence that would shatter 2 decades of trust. Explain this, Marcus said quietly, pushing the printed emails toward Richard. His voice was calm, but his hands shook slightly. Explain why you kept my son from me for 23 years. Richard adjusted his glasses nervously, his usual confident demeanor cracking. Marcus, you have to understand. The company was just taking off. We were about to go public. Any scandal, any hint of a secret child. So you buried every message from Sarah? James interrupted, his voice sharp. Every email, every letter, every phone call. You watched my mother struggle alone, knowing the truth the whole time? The older man's shoulders slumped. It was never personal. When Sarah first reached out, you were negotiating with major investors. Millions of dollars were at stake. I did what I thought was best for the company. Marcus opened his desk drawer and pulled out Sarah's last letter, dated just months before her death. The paper was worn from being read multiple times since James had shown it to him. She was dying, Richard. She was dying, and she just wanted her son to know his father. The company was your dream, Richard protested weakly. Everything you ever wanted. I was protecting that dream. James laughed bitterly. His dream? What about my mother's dreams? What about my dreams of having a father? He walked to the desk and picked up one of the emails. Look at the date on this one. I was 12, just won my first coding competition. Mom was so proud, wanted to share it with him, but you marked it as spam, didn't you? Richard's face paled as Marcus stood up slowly. 20 years, Richard. For 20 years, you've been like a father to me. You guided me, advised me, helped me build this empire. You walked to the window, standing beside his son, but you robbed me of the chance to be a father myself. I kept every threat away, Richard said desperately. Every gold digger, every scandal, every person who might have taken advantage of you. The company needed you focused, dedicated. Dedicated? Marcus turned sharply. I lost my soul being dedicated. I lost the love of my life and my child because I was too focused on success. He pressed a button on his desk phone. Security, please come to my office. Richard stood up, panic crossing his face. Marcus, please. Everything I did was for you, for the company. We can fix this. No, Richard. Marcus's voice was firm. We can't fix the past 23 years. We can't give Sarah back her life. We can't give James back his childhood. He looked at his son, seeing Sarah's determination in his eyes. But we can make sure nothing like this happens again. The security team entered the office. Marcus spoke without taking his eyes off his former mentor. Please escort Mr. Chen out. His access to all company properties and systems is revoked, effective immediately. As Richard was led away, still protesting, James turned to his father. There will be legal implications. He knows all the company's secrets. Marcus nodded. I know, but some things are more important than company secrets. He picked up the photo of Sarah from his desk, the one from their college days. I lost my way once by choosing the company over family. I won't make that mistake again. James was quiet for a moment, then said softly, Mom would be proud. This is the Marcus Sterling she always told me about. Father and son stood together, watching through the window as Richard Chen was escorted from the building. The man who had helped build Sterling Technologies, but who had also kept them apart for 23 years, was finally gone. In his wake, he left a father and son with wounds to heal, but also with a chance to build something new. Something based on truth and family rather than secrets and success at any cost. The press conference room at Sterling Technologies headquarters was packed with reporters, their cameras flashing like lightning. Marcus stood at the podium, James by his side, both dressed in matching dark suits. The massive screen behind them displayed their new company logo, along with the words, Sterling Mitchell Foundation. 23 years ago, Marcus began, his voice steady despite his nervousness. I made a choice that haunts me to this day. I chose ambition over love, success over family. Today, I'm here to make a different choice. The reporters leaned forward, their pens poised over notepads. The company's stock price ticker scrolled across the bottom of the room's screens, but for once, Marcus wasn't watching it. I'm stepping down as CEO of Sterling Technologies, he announced. The room erupted in gasps and camera clicks. But this isn't an ending. It's a new beginning. Together with my son, James Mitchell, I'm establishing the Sterling Mitchell Foundation, dedicated to two causes close to our hearts. James stepped forward, touching a button that changed the screen behind them. A photo of Sarah appeared, not the old college photo, but one from her teaching days, surrounded by students at her programming school. The Foundation's first mission, James continued, is to reopen and expand the Sarah Mitchell Programming Academy for underprivileged youth. My mother believed that every child deserved a chance to learn, regardless of their background. We're making that dream a reality. Marcus watched his son speak with pride swelling in his chest. James had Sarah's passion, her drive to help others. The past month of working together had shown Marcus just how much he had missed. Our second mission, Marcus added, is to establish the Sarah Mitchell Cancer Research Fund. We're dedicating $5 billion to finding better treatments and supporting families affected by cancer. His voice cracked slightly. No one should have to fight that battle alone. The questions from reporters came rapid fire. What about the company's leadership? Is this related to the failed wedding? What about Xavier Thompson's takeover bid? Marcus raised his hand for silence. Sterling Technologies will continue under new leadership, with both James and myself on the board. But our focus now is on using our resources for meaningful change. Success isn't measured by stock prices, it's measured by the lives we touch. After the press conference, father and son stood in Sarah's old classroom at the Programming Academy. The room had been dusty and abandoned just weeks ago. Now, fresh paint brightened the walls, and new computers sat on every desk. Mom used to stay late every night, James said, running his hand along one of the desks. Teaching extra classes to kids who couldn't afford regular tuition. She packed them dinner from her own kitchen. Marcus nodded, picturing Sarah's dedication. The foundation will provide free education, meals, and even job placement assistance. No child will be turned away. And the Cancer Research Fund? James asked. That's a lot of money, even for you. It's worth every penny, Marcus replied. If we can help even one family avoid what you and Sarah went through. He trailed off, emotion thick in his voice. A knock at the door interrupted them. Victoria stood there, looking uncertain. I saw the press conference, she said softly. What you're doing? It's incredible. Marcus smiled gently. I'm becoming the man I should have been all along, the man Sarah always believed I could be. Victoria stepped forward, holding out a small box. Inside was her engagement ring. Maybe we could start over. Now that you found yourself again? Marcus looked at the ring, then at his son. James gave a small nod, understanding in his eyes. But Marcus shook his head, gently closing the box. Thank you, Victoria, but no, I have a lot of lost time to make up for. Right now, being a father is the only role I want to focus on. As Victoria left, James turned to his father with tears in his eyes. Mom always said you had a good heart. She said someday you'd remember that success isn't about what you have, but about what you give. Outside, the sun set over the city, casting a golden glow through the classroom windows. Father and son stood together, surrounded by the legacy of a woman who had never stopped believing in love's power to change hearts, even from beyond the grave. 1 year later, the Sarah Mitchell Programming Academy buzzed with activity. Children's laughter echoed through the halls as students rushed between classes, their laptops tucked under their arms. Marcus stood in the doorway of the main computer lab, watching James teach an advanced coding class to a group of eager teenagers. "Remember what my mom always said," James told his students, his eyes bright with enthusiasm. "Code isn't just about making computers work, it's about making lives better." He caught sight of his father and smiled, a gesture that still made Marcus's heart warm. Their relationship had grown stronger with each passing month. The academy had expanded from one small building to 5 campuses across the country. Pictures of Sarah hung in every lobby, her warm smile watching over thousands of students who now had the chance she had always wanted to give. The Sarah Mitchell Cancer Research Fund had already helped fund 3 promising new treatment studies. Marcus's phone buzzed with a news alert. Sterling Technologies stock had finally recovered to its pre-wedding levels, but he barely glanced at the notification. These days, his measure of success had nothing to do with market values. After James's class ended, father and son walked to their favorite spot, the small cafe where they had first truly talked. They sat in the same corner booth, but this time there was no tension, no old wounds bleeding between them. "The new coding program for hospitals is ready," James said, opening his laptop. "It'll help doctors track patient treatments better, maybe even save lives." He paused, then added softly, "Mom would have loved this." Marcus nodded, remembering Sarah's dreams of using technology to help people. She always saw the bigger picture. "I was so focused on building wealth, I forgot about building a better world." The cafe's bell chimed as Richard Chen walked in. The former advisor had aged considerably in the past year, his hair now completely gray. He stopped short when he saw them, then slowly approached their table. "Marcus, James," he said hesitantly. I've been following the Foundation's work. What you're doing? It's remarkable." James tensed slightly, but Marcus placed a calming hand on his son's shoulder. "Thank you, Richard. Would you like to join us?" Richard's eyes widened in surprise. "After everything I did?" "Mom believed in second chances," James said quietly. "She never gave up on anyone, not even those who hurt her." As Richard sat down, Marcus noticed a young woman entering the cafe. Her dark curly hair and round glasses reminded him so much of Sarah that for a moment, his breath caught. She was one of their first scholarship students, now graduating at the top of her class. "Mr. Sterling, Mr. Mitchell," she called out excitedly, rushing to their table. "I just got accepted to MIT's computer science program. Full scholarship." James beamed with pride. "Just like your 2 favorite teachers," he said, gesturing between himself and Marcus. The girl nodded enthusiastically. "And I'm going to make Ms. Sarah proud. I'm going to change the world with code, just like she always said we could." As she hurried off to share her news with friends, Richard wiped his eyes. "This is what success really looks like, isn't it? Not stock prices or market shares, but lives changed." Marcus looked around the cafe, at his son who had forgiven him, at his former mentor seeking redemption, at the young students chasing dreams that Sarah had nurtured. The weight of his past mistakes would always be there, but it was lighter now, balanced by the good they were doing in Sarah's name. "You know what I've learned this past year?" Marcus said, putting his arm around his son's shoulders. "A true legacy isn't built on secrets and power. It's built on love, forgiveness, and the courage to change." James smiled, his mother's gentle spirit shining in his eyes. "Speaking of change, Dad, I have an idea for a new project. Something bigger than anything we've done before." "Tell me about it," Marcus said, and meant it with all his heart. He had spent 23 years not listening to the people he loved. Now, every word, every idea, every moment with his son was precious. Outside, spring sunshine warmed the city streets. Inside the cafe where it had all begun again, a father and son sat together, planning not just their future, but the futures of countless others. And somewhere, Marcus was sure, Sarah was smiling.